Welcome to another week, another show of Hawkeyed with me, Dave O'Hara. Momentarily, your CEO buddy, John Steppe on the screen. John, of course, with the Gazette.com, Cedar Rapids Gazette, beat writer for the Iowa Hawkeyes, specifically football. A few other things. John's always a busy guy, but you'll see all of John's information at the bottom of the screen along with mine and all of our guests throughout the show to see all their handiwork. Hawkeyes' big 13-10 victory. Another fourth kicker in 7 years for the Hawkeyes to beat Nebraska. As you smile with me, 13-10 victory, very reminiscent of last year. Hawkeyes win at Kinnick Stadium, 8-4 overall, 6-3 in the Big Ten. Let's talk about that. Oh, by the way, Caleb Johnson declaring himself for the NFL draft. Won't play in the Hawkeyes' upcoming bowl game. We'll find out where that is this Sunday, December 8th, as we record this on Tuesday afternoon, December 3rd. John, welcome aboard. Good to see you again. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me. Always a pleasure.
John, let's get to it right away. Let's talk Caleb Johnson first. I already gave the background of the Hawkeye season and game against Nebraska, but Caleb Johnson, what a season, what a run, what a catch and run against Nebraska for that touchdown. Let's talk a little bit about Caleb Johnson, please, John.
Yeah, quite the grand finale for him. Really an impressive season throughout 2024. Really showed tremendous growth from 2023 when it was kind of a little bit of a down year for him to 2024, where he really is a dynamic playmaker. And he's going to be somebody that's going to be in consideration when it comes to Heisman voters' ballots. Can't reveal the Heisman ballot until after it is out, but he's certainly somebody who has put himself in the conversation for that. And no real surprise in terms of him not playing in whichever bowl game Iowa will be playing in. You look at it, and this is kind of par for the course for a running back of his caliber. Certainly one of the top running backs in this year's class. You can probably make an argument, maybe for him, maybe for a few others, kind of in that 2, 3, and 4 spot at running back. I think Ashton Jeanty from Boise State is probably going to go number 1 in this year's draft class. But regardless, Caleb Johnson has done a lot. He's put enough film out there to really show that he could warrant potentially early round consideration, really, from NFL teams come the spring.
Yeah, and, John, it's going to be interesting to see if the Hawks go to the Reliant Quest Bowl in Tampa. We'll talk about that in upcoming weeks. We're going to have plenty of time, almost a month between now and bowl season. So we've got plenty of time to talk about that. But I wanted to ask you about another player. Cade McNamara did not come out for senior day in his announcement on the field. So any news on anything with Cade McNamara? Can he come back? Would he come back? Brendan Sullivan, of course, will be available for the bowl game. He can come back. Of course, obviously can. We're going to have a lot of other turmoil around the quarterback. But it's Jackson Stratton's team right now as we speak today. Of course, the CFP, College Football Playoff vote's going to be nuts tonight as we talk a lot of three defeat teams, SEC, ACC, Big 12, Big 10. Where do they all fall in line? That's tonight on, again, Tuesday night, on December 3rd. But let's talk a little bit about that with Cade McNamara and the rest of the quarterback situation, since that seems to be topic du jour in Iowa City.
Yeah, so I asked Kirk Ferentz about why Cade McNamara wasn't recognized during the senior day ceremony. He was in the game notes as one of the seniors expected to be recognized. And then you're going through alphabetical order, and all of a sudden they seem to skip the M's. But Kirk Ferentz said that it was Cade McNamara's desire to not participate in the senior day ceremony, and Iowa decided to honor that. So that was a decision on Cade's end. In terms of his future, he is officially in his 6th and final year of eligibility. But if he decides to, he probably has a pretty good case to make in terms of an NCAA waiver. When you think about how much time he missed this season, he played, I think it was 8 games this year. He was only able to play in 5 games last year, and I think it was 3 games the year before. So he could potentially make that case to the NCAA, and I think that would be a compelling case if it was up to me. Now, it's not up to me, but if he does get a waiver, my assumption, my prediction, I guess I would say, would be that Iowa is probably moving forward, assuming that Cade McNamara is not going to be a Hawkeye. So we'll see what exactly that all entails with Cade McNamara. But in terms of the quarterbacks who Iowa is expecting to have in 2025, Brendan Sullivan has 1 more year of eligibility. So we've certainly seen this year how he can make plays on his feet, and he certainly if that's your starting quarterback in 2025, you could have much worse situations there. The interesting
Absolutely.
thing is going to be the transfer portal, which opens next week. Does Iowa get a quarterback who could potentially compete with Sullivan? That will be a very interesting question. And then the interesting thing with Jackson Stratton is he was kind of the development project for Tim Lester, where he's somebody that Tim found out of the portal looking at high school tape. And he didn't really have great production at Colorado State, but Tim Lester looked at it as, okay, if I was looking at this guy as a high school recruit, I'd recruit him. He liked the tape and
Sure.
natural thrower, and we saw that on a few occasions. He still has some developing to do, so that's really where the quarterback position stands right now. I'll be very curious to see what happens with the portal. Of course, Iowa has an interesting roster situation in general in terms of, as does everybody, in terms of having to cut down to 105.
I respect and admire, and I think everybody does, the decision Caleb Johnson made, but also I think Hawkeye fans are endeared even more so now to Nick Jackson and Jay Higgins.
Yeah, and it was no surprise when they said that they were going to play. That just fits who they are. And, you look at even the fact that Jay Higgins played in the Maryland game stood out to me in terms of you look at the nature of his injury against UCLA, and that was a fairly quick turnaround. Obviously, had the bye week in between, but still for 15 days later for him to be playing out there as if everything was just totally fine. That's who Jay Higgins is, and that's who Nick Jackson is. And you talk about pleasant surprises going back to last year when it's a pretty tough job to replace Jack Campbell and Seth Benson. And Jay Higgins, Nick Jackson, I think has surpassed everyone's expectations as the Mike linebacker and the Will linebacker of 2023 and 2024. And what they've done, it's easy to take for granted in Iowa City because we've seen really stellar play at both of those positions for a while now. But it really is not easy to do. And that'll be a treat wherever Iowa is playing, whether that's Tampa, whether that's Nashville, whether that's somewhere else. It'll be a treat to get to see them play at least one more time.
Folks, there he is, beat writer for the Iowa Hawkeyes, specifically football, but for the Gazette.com and Cedar Rapids Gazette, John Steppe. John, my friend, as always, thanks so much for joining us, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thanks. Always a pleasure.
You're welcome, and thank you, John. So for John Steppe, I'm Dave O'Hara. We'll be back to close out the show with Ryan Leuhrsmann, former Hawkeye men's basketball player, for the next two segments. We'll be back with more Hawkeye in just a few moments.
Hawkeyed is brought to you by BettorEdge, your ultimate social betting marketplace. With no VIG, you're bound to win more on every bet on BettorEdge. Founded by Hawkeye alum James Siles and proud Iowan Greg Kajewski, BettorEdge delivers an unmatched betting experience. Plus, what's not to love when they're committed to supporting charities and children's hospitals near you? Join the action now. Sign up at bettoredge.com/Hawkeyed and get $10 to start winning more today. BettorEdge, where your social betting means your bets go further and you win more.
Welcome back to Hawkeye with me, Dave O'Hara. Momentarily, you'll see our buddy Ryan Leuhrsmann will be on the screen. Ryan, a former Hawkeye basketball playing great. So many stories that Ryan has told me off the air. We'll get him on the air and we'll talk about some that can air. I'm kidding, but looking forward to talking to Ryan. Well, also, Ryan was a former high school coach, Cedar Rapids Xavier, and he'll tell us what he's up to nowadays and got a lot going on in his life with his kids. But then we're going to have Ryan back for two segments. He's kind enough to join us for the second and third segment. And we'll talk about this year's Hawkeye men's basketball team as we record this on December 3rd, Tuesday afternoon. Hawks play Northwestern tonight, 6 o'clock tip. We're recording this just before that. So the Hawks starting in the Big Ten. They're 6-1 right now, and Northwestern is 6-2. So it should be some fun and breaking that down as well. So Ryan, first and foremost, thanks for joining us. Great to see you. And how's everything going with you, my friend?
Hey, outstanding, Dave. Great to see you. I appreciate the opportunity to connect with you and talk Hawks with you and all the fans.
Absolutely, man. We've had a lot of your teammates I've had on over the years, over the 5 years we've been on television here, and besides radio as well, and really looking forward to catching up with you. Of course, we're going to start. You're a part of that team, the last Hawkeye men's basketball team, and I know fans are like, Dave, we know, but I got to say it. 1999, Tom Davis, your coach, and you, and we've had Jess Suttles on, J.R. Koch, Kent McCausland. Talk to me about your experience those years, coming out of Cedar Rapids, Washington High School, and then playing for the Hawkeyes and some of the guys I just mentioned, and Tom Davis as well. Ryan, please.
Yeah, no, I was blessed to be on some really terrific teams under Coach Davis for 3 years, and then my final year with Steve Alford. But as you mentioned, we had a lot of Iowa guys on the team, McCausland, Koch, Settles, Dean Oliver, and so forth. And then a great mix of guys from like Michigan and Illinois. That was kind of a recruiting footprint back then under Coach Davis, with Rich Walker and Gary Close doing a lot to piece together a team that really fit and complemented Coach Davis' up-tempo system. So it was a lot of fun. We played in a lot of big games, had a number of memorable wins. And to your point, that Sweet 16 run with Coach Davis in his final year was just an awesome way to send him out. And I'm looking forward to these guys finding a way to get there here either this year or the coming years. So much of it is you got to set yourself up with a great regular season, which we've done. And then you got to get a favorable draw. I mean, the matchups need to be in your favor. And, one thing Coach Davis did, we kind of broke the early part of the season up into like 4-game sections or 4-team sections and, kind of bracket play mentality. And I think having that like early on in like the Hawkeye shootout, some of the exempt tournaments that we played in like the Maui Classic, those things kind of prepared us mentally, I think, for the end of the year, the NCAA tournament, the years we were fortunate enough to qualify. And you get into there and all you worry about is the 4 teams that are there. You just have to be better than the other 3. And, if you win 2, you move to the next week. And we just wanted to get to the next destination. And fortunately, we were able to do that and play in Phoenix.
That year going to the Sweet 16, Tom Davis was announced he was going to be done at the end of that year. Settles and Kent McCausland have talked to me, as did J.R. Koch, about that bus ride after losing to UConn and coming into an empty locker room, clearing your stuff out with no coaches there because Close, Davis, all those guys, as you mentioned, were gone. That had to be, I'm sure your experience was similar to Kent's, JR's, and Jess Settles' too.
Yeah, it was definitely an empty feeling. And I got one little tidbit to share with you.
Lay it on us, please.
I was one of the last guys out with Jess Settles, and we had shuttle vans from the Suns Arena. I think it was America West back then when we lost to UConn in the Sweet 16. And we were just devastated because we played them tough. We had our chances. I had a 3 rim in and out during a critical spot. It went out, obviously, and it led to a UConn run out that I think put them up 6. And it would have been, we would have cut it to 1. So what could have been, and I remember being on the back of the van with Jess, and he's like, man, Lou, he goes, if you would have made that shot, we won that game. He goes, we never would have paid for a meal or a beer in the state of Iowa the rest of our life. We would have been on our way to the Elite 8 and probably the Final 4 the way it played out because there were weaker teams at the next stop.
Let's talk about your experience then. You went from after playing at Iowa and coaching, and I love your experience because what a great run you had at Xavier, but you had a family with your kids and trying to incorporate that in your life of being a coach and talk about your professional life now and what you're up to. And just love catching up with you because your story is great. And I think a lot of our Hawkeye fans are wondering, what's Ryan Leuhrsmann up to post his playing days? So let's talk coaching first before we talk about today, please, Ryan.
Yeah, no, the coaching thing was a lot of fun. Got to give credit to Coach McCaffrey and Coach Davis. Both of them were people that I leaned on early on when I made the transition from coaching freshman basketball to taking on a varsity job in one of the toughest conferences in the state. And those guys were real generous with their time, particularly Fran. I didn't obviously play for him, but he's treated us alumni like we're one of his own, which is unique and why we still have a tight-knit group overall. So I can't give enough credit to him and his staff for how they embrace everybody that's worn the black and gold on the hardwood. We were able to win a couple titles along the way, but like in anything in team sports, what you really value the most are the relationships that you build. And, the opportunity to coach and mentor some terrific kids in the Xavier system was just outstanding. And fortunately, we had a run where we went to 4 straight state tournaments, finished 3rd twice and won 2 state titles. So it was a fun run, but to your point, had to move on and spend more time with my own kids. I coached my own kid who's a sophomore at Linn-Mar right now in AAU for a number of years.
Now, is he going to be a Ryan Jr. where he may have D1 aspirations? I know it's too early to tell, but I'm just curious where your dad hat is and where your coach hat is and your talent assessment. I don't want to lay out, but I had to do that. I'm sorry.
I love him to death. He's just a great kid. He's got some ability. He just needs to hit a growth spurt. He's a late bloomer in that regard, but The beauty of it is he has a love for the game and just enjoys playing it. And I'm just glad that I was able to coach him a little bit. And now I get to sit back as a dad and just soak it all in and enjoy watching him play the game with the kids that he grew up with.
And now you're doing very well in business, and I want you to share that with the listeners as well as what you're up to, and still in the Cedar Rapids area, as you mentioned. So lay that out for us, if you will, and then we'll close this segment out and come back and talk Hawkeye men's basketball current day. So tell us that, please, Ryan, if you would.
Yeah, working in business development. I've been a career salesman, but working in business development for my good friend who ironically was an Iowa State football player, Brett Kellogg, but working for his Serve Pro franchises in the Cedar Rapids and Des Moines area, looking to grow things not only on the residential side, but on the commercial side. So it's been a lot of fun. I've worked in insurance for 13 years, kind of like Kent McCausland at an independent agency. So I've got a lot of relationships there that are complementing me in this new role that I'm in. But I've enjoyed getting over to Des Moines. I've been to a couple iClub events over there, reconnecting with some old friends and Iowa contacts from those days. And that Hawkeye network's a strong one. And, we all have that bond together, and we want to see each other excel and do well. So it's been a lot of fun reconnecting with people.
That is great. And thank you for sharing all that with us. And give a shout out to the Hawkeye women's basketball team, who is now ranked 17 in the country, undefeated at 8-0. Hawkeye men, I mentioned, is 6-1. Men's and women's wrestling just having an unbelievable start to their year again as well, adding near the top of the national rankings and winning tournaments and doing great things. And we'll get into that more as the year progresses once we get through football, as well as a major league big time congratulations to the U of Iowa women's soccer team, who went to the Sweet 16 for the first time ever. So the farthest they've ever gone, and unfortunately lost a 1-0 match, but what a season they had, and congratulations to them. So Ryan, if you'll stay with us, as you mentioned, we can't wait to have you back for the next segment. So thanks again very much, and we look forward to talking to you in the next segment.
You bet. Looking forward to it.
Myself as well. So thanks again to Ryan Leuhrsmann, former Hawkeye men's basketball player. We'll be back with more Hawkeye than me, Dave O'Hara, in just a few moments.
Farming comes with a lot of frustrations, but the number one conversation you don't want to have is when your local seedsman says, "I'm sorry, we don't have that hybrid that you early ordered and paid for." Hi, this is Joe Leuhrsmann from Leuhrsmann Seeds. We do business a little different. We call it the Leuhrsmann Seeds no substitution or it's free guarantee. If we do not deliver the hybrid that you ordered, the substitution will be free. Contact your local Leuhrsmann Seeds dealer today, and we'd be happy to increase your corn yield with our best hybrids. From Leuhrsmann Seeds, your friend in the field.
Welcome back to Hawkeye with me, Dave O'Hara. Momentarily, you'll see our buddy Ryan Leuhrsmann, kind enough to join us for a second segment, which is the third segment. We had John Steppe in the first segment, Ryan Leuhrsmann in the second segment, and now the third segment. We're going to talk some current Hawkeye men's basketball. Of course, you know Ryan, former Hawkeye basketball player in the late 90s, early 2000s, again, as he mentioned, with Tom Davis, and then 1 year into Steve Alford. But let's talk current day, Ryan, and the Hawkeyes today, as we record this on Tuesday afternoon, December 3rd. Tonight, they tip off another early Big Ten matchup. December games in the Big Ten. Hawks at home at Carver Hawkeye against Northwestern, 6-2. Hawks 6-1, early 6 o'clock tip. Ryan, what are your thoughts of these? I know when they expanded the Big Ten and they've added these extra Big Ten conference games, taking away non-con games, and now we're playing 2, sometimes 3, but 2 this year again in December. What are your thoughts of these early Big Ten games?
It's critical, especially a game like this where Northwestern's probably pegged to be finished in the lower half of the Big Ten. You got to protect your home court. And this is a game that's, it's early to say this, and obviously it's a little hyperbole, but it's almost a must win, really. If you want to stay in the hunt for being in the top half or the top third, you must win games like this against teams that you're equal to or on paper better than. But to the point I raised in the earlier segment, you almost want to break the season into like 4-game stretches like Coach Davis did. So you kind of narrow your focus and really, it just kind of gets you really dialed into the moment and the game at hand, rather than thinking, oh, big picture, we got to qualify for, the NCAA tournament or whatever the goal is. And that's the main goal, obviously.
It's interesting that you say that, because now we look at team against team on paper, as you mentioned. Chris Collins, of course, we know, great relationship with Fran McCaffrey, great young coach, or he's been there a while now, so he's not so young anymore, but Chris Collins at Northwestern. But you got Barnheiser still there. You've got Nicholson, the big guy inside. And the Hawks have been out rebounding and beat up a little bit on the boards, and they want to run and get out, as you know, Ryan. And, Owen Freeman on the boards, and it's nice, with Peyton Sanford helping out and his younger brother Price coming off the bench, or in some cases starting, depending on injuries. So Peyton says he's better now with the injured wrist and his shooting was off a little bit. Same with Josh Dix, Brock Harding having a heck of an early season. Of course, Owen Freeman. Some of these guys, Lajay Dembele, are really going to have to hone in on the boards because Nicholson's a 7-footer. Now, one of those three names I mentioned wasn't Boo Buie, mercifully this year, Ryan. And so Boo is no longer at Northwestern. He's on a two-way contract with the Knicks right now between the G League and the NBA. But that is one relief I can tell you. But this team, Northwestern, is going to try to put the wood to the Hawks on the boards tonight. You can be sure of that.
For sure they will. And I think it's really a key to the Iowa season. You know, our defense can be strong at times. Other times it's a point of criticism by some people. But I hearken back to a line that Coach Alford had, because that's when we switched from Coach Davis's zone half-court 1-2-2 matchup that we played to being a primarily man-to-man defensive team like Coach McCaffrey is, even though he'll mix in zone. You got to have a mentality where you only give them one shot. It's got to be one and done, is what he used to say. And so guys like Traore, Dembele, Freeman, you got to have guards that rebound. I don't know. Brock is a quick guy. You know, he anticipates well. We had guards during those days, particularly during the Davis era and the Alford era, that got in there and rebound. And it's such a critical statistic. I think out-rebounding the opponent, and then as Coach Knight always used to say, make more free throws than they attempt. So those are always two to kind of pay attention to.
That is important. And Thelwell, again, at guard can relieve Harding a little bit. And Drew's not that much bigger, Drew Thelwell, but still playing well in the early season, as you mentioned. Hopefully Traore can come back from that badly sprained ankle. Even Evan Braun's coming back from the sprained ankle. And hopefully Cooper Koch, from an unspecified and undetermined amount of time. Fran was very non-specific last night during his radio show. So hopefully they can get Coop back as well sooner than later. But a lot of interesting parts to this, as you mentioned, because if you want to get out and run, you can't do that without getting on the glass. And so that's going to be imperative. Plus, as you know, Ryan, better than anybody, as being a former shooting guard and a guard handling the ball at Iowa, you can't turn the ball over. And the Hawks have been so good at that over the years, especially with Connor McCaffrey in years past and even last year and now this year initially. But that turnover to assist ratio is imperative for a team like this Hawkeye team, Brian.
You know, it is, and it's important for Brock and Thelwell to really set the tone there. They're the ones that are going to have the ball in their hands leading the break, 70% of the time. So they really got to value that thing. That'll be something to watch, Dave, is their assist to turnover ratio for each of them through the years. But to your point, one thing about Coach McCaffrey, he's got one of the best offensive systems in all of college basketball. And the number of sets that they run and how precise they are in their execution. These kids know going into the game what the plan is. And when you know it inside and out and trust it, and then do the little things like take care of details, that lends itself to getting high percentage shots and not being careless and turning it over.
Absolutely. So, Ryan, I'm going to follow your lead with Coach Davis and kind of compartmentalize this. As when we record next week, we'll be getting ready for the Iowa State game at Carver Hawkeye Arena next Thursday. But I want to talk to you about Saturday, upcoming Michigan. The Hawks will play on the road at Michigan. So 2 early Big Ten games and then Iowa State. So a lot of people have mentioned, well, just Utah State's the only real competition. They've had it pretty easy. Washington State, well, thank you. Washington State was formidable. So this Hawk team has had some competition, but for some of those fans who don't think enough, we'll get ready for Northwestern tonight. Yeah, it is a home game, but it's a Big Ten game tonight on December 3rd. And then at Michigan, you know how tough a place Christ Arena is to play. And then back home at Carver Hawkeye against Iowa State. I don't want to get too far ahead of us, but the schedule is laid out for the Hawks. And what did Bill Parcells always say in the NFL with the Giants? You can only play the teams on your schedule, and that's what the Hawks have in front of them, Ryan.
That's right, and it's getting a really tough, particularly after this Northwestern game. So they had a chance to see Michigan play a little bit here over the holidays, and Coach May has a top to bottom thorough roster, good mix of bigs, talented guards, shooters, and listening to Coach Beeline do the analysis on the Big Ten Network, he feels like they have a contender for a Big Ten title. They've got that kind of talent, and so. To your point, like back in the day with Coach Davis, obviously we only had 11 teams in the Big Ten. Now they've got 16.
18 actually now.
18. I'm sorry, 18.
That's right.
You had more flexibility in the non-conference to go schedule a home and away with Kansas, a home and away with Missouri, a home and away with, rivalry, natural potential rivals like that. Whereas now with the Big Ten being an 18-team league, you gotta schedule some wins in there, or at least games on paper you should win.
Great analysis by you today on the current team, but thanks for taking us back into your life early and then up to date now in your personal life too. Great to catch up with you, Ryan. Thanks so much.
Appreciate it, Dave. Looking forward to this team this year. It's going to be a fun group to watch, and they're going to win a lot of games, I have a feeling.
So for Ryan Leuhrsmann and John Steppe, and my production partner, Greg Kajewski at Better Edge and BettorEdge.com. That's all from me and Dave O'Hara at Hawkeye. Thanks to all of you.